Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you a couple of ways how you can do drop caps or drop capitals using Adobe InDesign. Really conventional thing to have in things like magazines, not so much things like newspapers. So this might be something that you don't need to use because it's only really something that magazines specifically do. But I'm going to show you a couple of different ways how you can do drop caps. One of them is really basic with the easy way of doing it. One of them is a little bit more complicated. So if you don't know, a drop cap is something that you'd normally find at the start of a double page spread where the opening letter of a piece of body copy is larger, but also it drops into the actual article as well, hence why it's called a drop cap. It's usually a good little way or an indicator of where the article starts to help the reader out. What sometimes a lot of people do tend to do to make a drop cap is they will just find the first letter and they will increase the font size like that. Okay? Two things with that. A, it's stupid. It looks scruffy. B, that's not a drop cap because it doesn't drop into the text. The point of a drop cap is it drops down so that the start of the body copy is still one straight line. So that is not a drop cap. Okay? So I'm going to put that back to, what the hell was it even on? 12? Yeah, why not? So, to do a really basic drop cap, what you want to do is we want to make sure that we have our text tool selected and we have our first text box chosen. Now, my interface might look a little bit different to yours because I'm using a wider monitor. So, on mine, all I need to do is find my paragraph formatting options on my right hand side, which are over here. Sometimes your interface might look a little bit different and your text options might appear up at the top here. Alright, if that's the case, then you need to find the paragraph formatting tool, which is usually around about here somewhere. Normally sits underneath a little A that sits next to appearance. This is around about here. So if that is the case, in fact, actually, if I switch that to digital publishing, is that going to make a difference? Ah, there we go. Right, so yours might look like this. So if yours does look like this, to find your paragraph formatting options, it's this option here. That underneath there. Okay? So, your drop cap, really simple. It is this little option here, the one that's got the A and the two little arrows next to it. And if you increase that number, oops, I'm on the wrong line there, so you got to make sure you're on the right line. I'm going to increase that number, and you can see there, my capital letter is increasing in size, and the number indicates how many lines of text you want your capital to drop into. So you can see there, it's set at 4, therefore it is dropping into 4 lines. You could also, if you wanted to, increase the number of letters you use, or characters, no, not letters but characters. So you can see that I've got that set to 3 and it's got the W, the E and the apostrophe. I wouldn't do that though because that's not particularly conventional. Normally it's just the first letter that uses a drop cap. You can still do things with that drop cap to make it look a little bit more, nicer if you want to. Sometimes a lot of magazines will do things like they will change the font of a drop cap to make it look a little bit more stylish. Obviously the problem with this one though, as you can see here, you've got a bit of overlap on the text there, so it's not ideal. If you want to change the colour, you can do that as well, again to make it a bit more eye-catching, but you don't have to do that at all. It's just something to think about. So that's what a lot of magazines will sometimes do as well, is they will have the font of their drop cap in the same font style that they've used for their headline or their stand first or something like that. But again, it's something to think about. Now this is a really basic way of how to do a drop cap. Problem with this one though is you don't get a lot of freedom over what you can and can't do to it. So you might choose to have a drop cap that is a little bit more stylish, a little bit more creative, but it does require a bit more effort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this capital letter, this W, sorry, that I have made earlier, which you can check out the video on how to use clipping mask to see how I've made this on a previous one. And I'm going to use this as my drop cap. I'm just going to save this really quickly because I'm really prepared. I forgot to save this last time, so I'm just going to really quickly save this W. So save as, and we save as a PSD file. So let's just save it on my computer. Let's pop it on the desktop. I'm going to call it drop cap. Oops. I'm going to keep it as a PSD file because that's the default Photoshop file, and Photoshop files and InDesign program do work with each other. And then I'm going to place it on here. So file, place, desktop, drop cap, open. Right. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my text wrap options. Make it a bit smaller first because it's probably a little bit too big. Oops, don't forget to hold shift when you resize it. I'm going to make it a bit smaller because obviously it's a bit too big at the moment for a drop cap. And then let's fit my frame around my object. So, in fact, that's probably still a little bit too big. So I'm going to get my picture of my W here. This is one that I just made on Photoshop. And the reason why you might want to do this is because Photoshop gives you much more options for creative choices. So things like clipping masks, things like drop shadows, anything else that you might want to do to make your drop cap have a little bit more pizzazz. So all I'm going to do now is nice and simple. I'm going to use my text wrap options here. And again, if you don't see this, go to Window and go to text wrap, just there. And I'm going to simply wrap that around. Oh, I need to get rid of that W, don't I? There we go. So you can see there, I've got essentially my own drop cap that I have made. A little bit more creative, a little bit more stylish, and it does the job pretty well, to be honest. I might probably also want to think about the actual type of text wrap that I use. So maybe let's go for detect edges instead. There we go, that's better. Because then I still get the nice little, what's what I'm looking for? The nice little follow around the actual edge of the image rather than the edge of the frame there, which works a bit better as a drop cap. So if you're wondering what I did there, I'll go back and show you again. I went to the text wrap options on here because there's more options of what's changed there, and I changed my contour options to detect edges. Now what InDesign is going to do there is it's going to read the image, which in this case is this W, and it's going to find the edges of the image for me, and it's going to use that as the basis for its wrapping. So then it wraps around the edge of the W, of the shape, not the frame that it's in. Alright, if I want to increase the, what's it called, I forgot his name, offset, that's it. Increase the offset a little bit to give it a bit more room to breathe, you can do. So this is a bit more complicated, a little bit more fiddly, but it gives you a much nicer drop capital, something a bit more stylish, something that, you know, is a bit more showy-offy, I suppose is the word to use. So if you've got time, you could do something like this. But don't forget, obviously, drop caps are only something really that you're probably going to use for something like a magazine double-page spread. If it's something like a newspaper, you're not going to use it. You might use it for something like a leaflet maybe, but it's unlikely. I think probably if it's going to be something like a double or a single-page spread for a magazine, then you're more likely to use it. Okay, so you can do it really simply, but that way is probably a more creative way of doing a drop cap. So just bear that in mind, especially if you're thinking about the top end distinction grades, which are much more, there's a bit more emphasis on how creative you are with whatever the brief is asking you to do. So just bear that in mind, okay? Any questions on that, come and see me, send me an email, but that is pretty much it on how you can use InDesign to make a drop cap. So I'll catch you next time.